Okay, call to order the February 22nd City of Newport Beach Planning Commission. Let's everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Bartow, please lead us.
Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Staff, roll call, please.
All commissioners are present with the exception of Chair Elmore, Secretary Harris, and Commissioner Lowry, who are excused this evening.
Thank you. Our next item is public comment. This is a time for public comments on items that are not on the agenda and are generally within the purview of the Planning Commission. If you wish to speak, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Any public comments on non-agenda items tonight? Okay. Good evening.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark. Do I sign this first, or?
Sorry about that.
Okay. Hi there, my name is Mark, and I just wanted to thank the work that the Planning Commission and what staff has done for the city of Newport Beach. That's about it, and I just wanted to say that. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for non-agenda items this evening? Okay. Moving on to the next item, request for continuances. Staff, are there
There are
any
no
requests
requests for continuances. There are none.
Oh, thank you. All right, consent items. Item number 1, the minutes of the January 18th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Would anyone in the audience like to comment on the minutes? Okay. Seeing no comments, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve them with Mr. Mosier's edits.
How about a second?
Second.
All right. Let's call for a vote.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right. Next item, number 2, appeal of the Campbell Animal Keeping PA 2022-098, site location 1691 Orchard Drive.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Rosine Yolanda Summerhill with the City Attorney's Office. At the January 4th hearing, you did have a public hearing and deliberate and make a decision on that. This is simply a resolution that supports the findings or supports that decision. So we would just simply ask for you to take public comment and then make a motion to approve the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to comment on this item? Please. You speak at the podium there. Maybe we can work something out.
You say that it was about animal keeping. It's about the city recognizing me, the lawyer at the last hearing, as a disabled person seeking a reasonable accommodation. And they had an arbitrator there who said they recommended 3 city chickens, which is what the city had recommended. The next day after the planning meeting, I reduced the flock to 3 chickens. I can't reduce it any further because having less than 2 is cruel to the animals. And I have 6 doctors' letters in 10 letters, 6 different doctors explaining, not as thoroughly as they can, but I think enough for you to know that they medically recommend my keeping them and the harm that could be done if I give them up. So if you don't allow those 3 that the city recommended and the arbitrator recommended, I'm going to be forced to move. And just the capital gains and realtor costs will be $1 million up front. Not to mention that I can't relocate. I won't have enough left to relocate in Orange County. And I'll still have to go into City of Hope up to 3 times a week. And and also to UCI and to Hoag doctors. And the cost of doing that without Orange County transportation is going to be an ongoing, extreme, cost for the rest of my life. And I'm not willing to go against six of my doctors. There are more specialists who would also write if necessary. I didn't include urology and GI in there. I thought 6 would be enough. I don't believe that it's ever been about the neighbors. I was forbidden at the last meeting to even talk about my medical letters, and so the neighbors know nothing about my disability, nor do they know anything about the laws concerning reasonable accommodation for disabled people. I think what I hear now from the attorneys I've talked to, this should have always been handled by a person all cities must have called, I don't remember what it's called, but she found the name of this man, and he refused to talk to me or to my helper. So, but she said all people, Disability Rights California says all cities must have one of these people. Now, that might have been the person who recommended 3 chickens at our last meeting, but the name she had given me that she finally found won't even talk to me or Gerard or us together. So I've sent you another letter that has what some of the costs will be to me if I have to move, the inappropriateness of the venue, and I want you to also thoroughly read Mr. Moser's, I think, 11 pages that he worked on very hard. I never met him before the last meeting, and he's worked super hard on sending you things that I hope you've looked at. I don't think you considered in the answer that I've gotten so far, I don't think you ever mentioned anything about the disability or reasonable accommodations to a disabled person. I've spelled out a little further about damages. I also have put in notes and letters to you before about grandfathering.
Mrs. Campbell, could you wrap it up for us, please?
Bill Wise, the attorney here in Santa Ana, was addressing the idea of you not being able to treat different parts of Santa Ana Heights annexation differently. There's chickens across the street from the same person that's reporting me on a weekly basis for non-related to hens issues. And I think that the assessment of nuisance isn't accurate. All the stuff that was presented is years old when there was 45, and now there's 3, and they've been fenced 25 feet from the neighbors. And they were before many chickens and right up against neighbor's wall. Now there's 3, and they're fenced 25 feet to get away from neighbors. So the whole situation is not what you see before a couple of years ago. And so please read and address the former things that you've had and the new thing that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak on this item?
Pardon me?
No, we're fine. Thank you.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Vice Chair Rosine, members of the Commission, my name is Jim Mosier. As I explained in some detail in writing, I think that this appeal of a reasonable accommodation was misdirected to you by what appears to be a clerical or typographical or scrivener's error, as the city likes to say, in one line of a very long municipal code, including the planning code. The 2 most relevant sections that indicate that the appeal should not have come to you is in section in chapter 20.60, in sections 20 and 30 of that. The chapter is about the administrative responsibilities of the city staff, the planning commission, and the city council. It clearly says the city council can hear appeals from hearing officers and from the planning commission. It says the planning commission, and the only things it names that you can hear appeals from are the zoning administrator and the director, the planning director. It does not say you can hear appeals from the hearing officer. And that was purposeful in the ordinance when it was adopted. Also, in the carried over from that ordinance in section 20.50.020 It says, in the event an appeal is filed on a reasonable accommodation, the reasonable accommodation shall not become effective unless and until a decision is made by the council on the appeal. It is the council who makes the decision on the appeal. And even for the council, one line that was accidentally, apparently inadvertently left off when the zoning code was rewritten comprehensively in 2010. They tried to bring this forward. And that is, even the council is only allowed to consider whether the hearing officer made his or her decision, based on substantial evidence. They cannot substitute their opinion for his opinion of what that evidence indicates should be done. They can remand it back to him with new evidence, but they cannot overrule his reasoning. So this matter should not have come to you in the first place. And then it should have gone directly to the council. In addition, I believe you were given misinformation about the rules in Santa Ana Heights having expired at some time, made a decision based on that. I think the staff now agrees that it did not happen, so they have created new findings for you that are not based on anything you had a chance to debate or the public to rebut at the last meeting. So, for multiple reasons, I think you should not take action on this tonight. In fact, you should not take action on it at all because it should not have come to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Okay. Commissioners, any comment? Then why don't we call for a motion in regard to a vote on this resolution that's before us this evening.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Is this appeal, if they appeal this, will it go to city council at any point?
There is an appeal to the city council. Yeah, that opportunity is available.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion that we, we adopt resolution PC 2024-001.
Do we have an alternate or a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's call for a vote. All right.
Vice Chair Rosine, she can make that, if she likes to appeal to the city council, she can make that request to the city council.
Seems appropriate. Thank you. Okay.
The motion carries unanimously. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. Next item, item 3, public hearing 2607 Ocean Boulevard LLC residence. This is PA 2023-0064. Site location 2607 Ocean Boulevard.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rosine. Yolanda Summerall with the City Attorney's Office. Just for the record, Chair Elmore is recusing on this item for a real property interest.
Thank you for that. Staff, do we have a presentation this evening?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jocelyn Perez. I'm an Associate Planner with the Planning Division. This public hearing item is for the 2607 Ocean Boulevard LLC Residence Coastal Development Permit and Variance. The project site, 2607 Ocean Boulevard, is located within Corona del Mar. Surrounding land uses are almost exclusively residential with the exception of the Marine Lab right there on the water. I've highlighted some of the streets in the nearby area that I'll be referring to throughout my presentation. They include Ocean Boulevard, the China Cove Ramp, Way Lane, and Fernleaf Avenue. The project location is within an area that's known as China Cove. China Cove was developed for residential uses approximately 80 years ago. The project site is outlined there in yellow, and while the shape looks like a rectangle, the lot is actually irregularly shaped. It's shaped somewhat like a bow tie. It is located on a remnant bluff that's an extreme slope from Ocean Boulevard down to Way Lane. It slopes approximately 35 feet from Ocean Boulevard down to Way Lane. Also adjacent to the property is what looks like a green strip that's landscaping. That's an area that's known as the Ocean Boulevard Public Right-of-Way. There are 8 other properties that share this extreme slope between Ocean Boulevard and Way Lane. And I'd also like to highlight that there is an undeveloped city property immediately west of the project site and an undeveloped area on the marine property, or the Marine Lab property. The existing site was developed in the late 1940s. There is a 3-story single-family residence. The existing development is non-conforming as it exceeds the height limit along that southern edge, and it also encroaches into the required front, rear, and easterly side setback. And while there is a garage visible in this photo, the garage is undersized and the residence provides no code-compliant parking. Also on the left there, above the retaining wall, that is the undeveloped area of the property that is landscaped with natural vegetation. Within that public right-of-way that I mentioned earlier, there are unpermitted encroachments, so beyond the property line. They include a staircase that provides access from Ocean Boulevard to the existing residence. There's also an observation deck along with large landscaping. Within the public right-of-way at Way Lane, the building actually encroaches beyond the property line, and I have highlighted those areas in red. Also, while not an encroachment, I'd like to point out that the building has been recently vandalized and has been boarded up. So it's been sitting like this for a little while now, and I'll speak to that on my next slide. About 8 years ago, there was a proposal to redevelop this site. The previous owner applied for a CDP and variance. The design that was proposed 8 years ago is shown in yellow there. The roof line of that residence is shown in red. It was a 4-story building, and there is a privacy screen above the roof line that is shown in purple. The Planning Commission approved this project, that yellow shaded mass, in 2017, and that project was subsequently appealed to the California Coastal Commission. The California Coastal Commission staff recommended approval of the project. However, the application was withdrawn at hearing due to the Coastal Commission having concerns about potential impacts to views. So I'd like to highlight the current proposal that is outlined in green. It's significantly smaller than that proposal from 8 years ago by approximately 1,000 square feet. So that takes me into the current proposed project. The project will add 1,490 square feet for a residence just shy of 4,000 square feet. There'll be area added to the lower level, the middle level, and the upper level. The project will create code-compliant parking as well as provide an additional space. There are improvements proposed on the exterior of the structure, including landscape, hardscape, an in-ground spa, and also as part of the project, the encroachments within both the Ocean Boulevard right-of-way and the Way Lane right-of-way will be removed. As seen in the picture on the right, a portion of the site will be left undeveloped and in its natural state. This table summarizes the development and its compliance with the zoning code. Shaded there in red are the areas where the project does not comply with the zoning code. So first, the floor area limit exceeds the maximum for the site. The height of the building exceeds the limit for flat roofs and sloped roofs. However, it does comply with the additional height requirement for these bluffside properties that they do not exceed the curb height of Ocean Boulevard. The project also provides the minimum required open volume and the minimum required parking. Now, with regards to the setbacks, as I mentioned, the building currently encroaches into both the front, rear, and easterly side setback. The proposed project will introduce new building mass within the front and rear setback in the amount of, for the front setback, 1 foot 8 inches, and for that rear way lane setback, 9 feet 4 inches. However, it does not introduce any new building mass into the easterly side setback. The project requires discretionary approvals in order to implement. It requires a coastal development permit, and for those reasons I mentioned prior, for the floor area, the height, and the setback encroachments, it requires a variance from both Title 20 and Title 21 standards. In order to recommend approval of the project, staff is required to make a certain set of findings for the variance and for the coastal development permit. In order to recommend approval of a variance, there has to be some special or unique characteristic of the lot that's depriving the property owner of enjoyment of their lot. And it can't be a special privilege or detrimental to the surrounding properties. Similarly, in Title 21, which is our local coastal implementation program, there are the same findings, but there are additional findings with regards to impacts to coastal access and views. This image here dives into the first request for a variance for the floor area. As shown in green and purple, those are the code required front and rear setbacks. It eats up a large portion of the lot. This is a really wide lot and shallow lot, and it results in a really narrow buildable area. In the most constrained point, the buildable area is only 15 feet wide. So this lot has a floor area ratio of 0.67. Comparing this property to the other 8 properties between Ocean Boulevard and Way Lane that have that really similar extreme slope, all of the other properties have higher floor area ratios. Bringing the analysis to the properties that abut Way Lane, as you can see, these properties encroach into the required setbacks on Way Lane, so these properties likely already exceed the floor area limit as well. A little bit about Way Lane. Way Lane was historically an alley. It's 20 feet wide, and so if it was still designated as an alley, it would have a 0-foot setback. And as you can see, the majority of the development along Way Lane goes up right to the property line because it was an alley at one time. So this proposed project follows the existing pattern of development. This figure here highlights the existing building encroachments and shows the new encroachments. The new encroachments are shaded in green. The encroachment into the front setback occurs right at that pinch point, that 15-foot, where the building envelope is only 15 feet wide. And the majority of the encroachment occurs within that Way Lane setback. I've also circled the area where the building goes beyond the property line because the building will be adjusted and pulled back out of that Way Lane public right-of-way. As I mentioned earlier, setbacks eat up over half of this lot, where the surrounding properties setbacks only take up approximately 34% of those lots. The last request for variance is for the height. The existing building is non-conforming for height along that southern edge, and this diagram shows where the proposal exceeds the height limit. So starting with the parapet that's circled in red, the parapet is proposed for a height of 27 feet above the existing grade, where the height limit is 24 feet. The rebuilt roof line is in the worst location, 29 feet 11 inches above the existing grade, where the height limit is 29 feet. And these exceedances occur where there's the most steep drop in topography on the lot. And I also want to note that both of these exceedances still comply with that top of Ocean Boulevard curb limit. Next, a discussion of public views. Our code requires us to protect public views, so I've highlighted the nearest designated public viewing points. The views from Ocean and Carnation and Lookout Point are not analyzed in this project, as the project is blocked by the existing development. However, views from West Jetty View Park are included, and Ocean Boulevard. This view is taken directly from Ocean Boulevard. It highlights the area, the parapet that is 27 feet above grade. I'd like to highlight that this project will remove all of that landscaping that's currently blocking the view of the entrance to the harbor. And so the proposed project seen outlined there in yellow will not impact the views of the coast there. You can see also that this project does not even obscure the view of the beach below. I'm going to flip through a few more view simulations that highlight the same point I've just made. Here on Ocean Boulevard, once again, I've highlighted the landscaping to be removed. Once again, no impact to the beach or the views of the beach or the harbor. This one's taken from China Cove ramp, and the proposed development blends in with the residential development below. Another from China Cove ramp. This one shows that big antenna that's going to be removed. Now the view from the West Jetty View Park. Shaded in green is the new building mass that will be visible approximately 1,300 feet away from West Jetty View Park. The development takes advantage of the existing footprint and concentrates development on that existing footprint and leaves a portion of the property undeveloped. And that portion of property that's undeveloped blends with that city-owned property and the undeveloped portion of the marine laboratory I mentioned earlier to create a view corridor in that area. With regards to the bluff behind, the bluff is still visible, and the portion of bluff even higher up above the China Cove ramp is highly visible. This slide shows public access within proximity to the site. The public can access the coast through stairs from Ocean Boulevard down to Fernleaf Avenue. This project does not include any features that would obstruct access along these routes. Like I mentioned earlier, the existing structure is non-conforming for a variety of reasons. Title 21 has quite a few considerations that need to be made in order for an addition to be allowed. And staff analyzed the project against these considerations and found that the project complies and the addition is allowed. Staff has received written comments regarding the project, one letter of support and multiple letters of opposition. In response to some of the written comments received, staff has revised the resolution to include additional facts, and that the revised resolution was made available as additional materials earlier today. I'd also like to mention that in the construction management plan, there is a reference to construction occurring on Saturdays. However, this is an area where you can't do construction on Saturdays, so that'll be fixed prior to building permit issuance. So staff has been able to make the findings to recommend approval of the project. So next steps would be to conduct a public hearing, find the project exempt from CEQA, and adopt the resolution approving the project. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. The architect is also here and has a brief presentation.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that presentation. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Langford?
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Excellent presentation. I'm interested in the landscaping plan provided in our packet and condition number 42 as part of the resolution. It considers limiting the landscaping within the Ocean Boulevard setback to a maximum height of 5 feet, 60 inches. Did you consider limiting landscaping heights throughout the property, or how did you arrive at the Ocean Boulevard setback by itself? And the reason I ask, I saw on the landscaping plan some queen palms and some other palms that would be in that area that would likely be higher than 5 feet, so I just kind of wanted to work that out with you.
The project was reviewed by Public Works, and so staff worked with the Public Works Department to review the planting palette, and any plantings that would blend together and create like a hedge and block views are intended to be limited by that 60-inch condition of approval. The Queen Palm off to the side, to the easterly side of the property was reviewed by the Public Works Department and accepted, and it would not be limited to the 60 inches.
Okay. So the expectation would be that it would kind of grow up, but be part of the new view, but in a way that is positive and adding to the viewscape. Is that kind of the rationale?
That is part of the thought behind it, as well as it doesn't grow into essentially what like a hedge becomes a wall and blocks views. So since it doesn't have that type of branches and leafing down at the bottom, it's not likely to create a wall and block views.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I also had a question about the path that looks kind of worn and trod onto the parcel, whether the property owner considers that a prescriptive easement as they've used it for, 70 years, potentially. If they intend to continue using that path, is that something that the city is limiting access to from here on forth? And whether that would play into whether this is a Way Lane property address or Ocean Boulevard address?
As part of that review by Public Works, the path was identified as an unpermitted encroachment beyond the property line and non-standard encroachment. And so it was flagged for removal, and the applicant is okay with that condition to remove that pathway and restore the slope. Now, with regards to the addressing, my deputy director might help me with that one.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I know that came up in the comments as well. It's historically been addressed off Ocean Boulevard. Traditionally, the city isn't too strict on addressing as long as the numbering makes sense. We've been generally supportive of it. In this case, that's the historic address, and from staff's perspective, there's not a need to change the address.
Okay. I guess I would leave it up to the property owner to, if they have a preference on Way Lane, that would make sense to me. If they have the preference for Ocean Boulevard, that seems to be fine too. Thanks.
Do we have any other questions for staff? All right, commissioners, do we have any ex parte communication? We'll start down. Commissioner Langford?
None.
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 Sorry. You go last.
Right, I guess, is the applicant here when they'd like to make a presentation?
Vice Chair Rosini, if you can open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and the applicant can give the presentation.
All right, my name is Danny Martinez. I'm the architect for the project, and I'm going to be pretty brief with this presentation, partially because there's some redundancy between my presentation and what you've already seen with staff. But I wanted to talk a bit about the three topics here: my project comparison, the variance impacts, and the site impacts in terms of coastal resources. So the reason why I'm incorporating a project comparison is, as we worked with the neighbors, both in group hearings and individually on site and just general correspondence, because of the long event of the previous approval, everybody was very familiar with that project. And so the best way for us to describe the evolution of what we did and why we did it, we used that comparison, that compare and contrast with the neighbors, and it seemed to kind of settle in nicely with them. So I'm going to use a little bit of that theme tonight as we go through this presentation. All right, we'll start with Way Lane, because this is the side of the property that has the most impact on the direct community. And you'll notice on the column to the left, this the 2017 approval. On the column to the right, of course, is our proposal. And you've seen these slides, or versions of these slides in Jocelyn's presentation. But the things I want to point out here, a couple things I want to point out is, First of all, in our approach, because we're using the existing house and we're considering this a renovation and really a rehabilitation of the property, we decided to maintain the three-story facade. And in doing so, as we moved away from the existing property, we kind of telescoped it down to a single level. So you'll see in that upper view and in the lower view on the right column, what we're doing is we're kind of going just into a single story on the upper level on that left-hand side, and then affording ourselves terraced planters so that we can buffer way lane for the areas that we're actually adding square footage to it. Oh, sure, I'm sorry. So in this slide, oh yeah, that's much better, sorry. So in this slide, this is of course a direct comparison. In the yellow, you see the mass of the building that was approved in 2017. You've seen a version of the slide in Jocelyn's presentation. The green is the addition, and the red is the existing mass of the building as it stands now. So you can see what we've done is we've incorporated the existing building. We have been very conscientious of not moving deeply into the site. In fact, in this situation, if you look at the new single-car garage, from that level, this is the only excavation where we're actually going to be exporting dirt. And it only occurs from about a 4-foot level to about a 9-foot level in the back of the new garage. For the second-story addition and the third-story addition on grade, all of these will be using conventional framing or conventional foundation work on grade. So we're not digging into the property in order to facilitate the construction. Excuse me. So I'm only going to briefly touch on the variances. I think the staff report really kind of drills down on why the justifications exist. Again, we're showing here the same patterning that Jocelyn showed in her slide, and of course this kind of bow tie effect that the existing property presents to us. And one of the complications in the justification for an FAR variance is primarily because in order for us to fulfill the percentages that an FAR provides, we would have to fit that in essentially the width of a car space. And that just doesn't work for a residential construction of any sort. So, the remedy, of course, is the variance application, and I think the justifications have been put forward nicely by staff. So this is a slide that you have not seen, but this one illustrates in kind of reverse form the exact mass of the building in green. And what we're illustrating here is that we are protecting the coastal resources and specifically the views. You can see we're not interrupting any view whatsoever of the beach at China Cove, and of course everything beyond that across the bay and into West Jetty Park are completely unhindered by the construction. So back to a little bit of a comparison, you can see the red background is we're looking from West Jetty towards the lot. You can see the background, which is one of the reasons why the Coastal Commission had concerns and were at one point ready to continue the project before it was withdrawn. And that is the project didn't respect the coastal bluff views. And as you can see, it's about it's 84% larger than the proposal that we are bringing here tonight. And to see that in context, this is an important slide, primarily because the standard for which the Coastal Commission will review bluff view and the preservation of bluff has to do with building environment that already exists. So if you kind of look, it's not a super clear slide, but if you look from just about center of the slide, you see the roof line in kind of a Spanish revival style home, which is 2 doors down. And if you follow that roof line across to the house that is just to the east, sandwiched between our project and the Spanish revival style house, and then moving across our property, you'll see that there is a common prevalent design pattern there that we are honoring. And the other important thing here, of course, is now you can see in this slide the amount of bluff top view and preservation that we are providing here, even to the extent that you can still see, not so much in the clarity in this slide, but you can still see the entire length of the curb line of Fern Leaf ramp as it starts from Ocean Boulevard and goes all the way down until it reaches the Spanish Revival type of home. And so you're getting not just the bluff from Ocean Boulevard to the ramp, but you're getting a portion of the ramp to the construction that we're proposing. And then the last thing I want to point out in this view, which is a rendering obviously of our design, one of the things that we've done to a pretty great extent is you can see, if you look at the two-car garage, that's the plane of the existing building as it reaches the ground at Way Lane. Our main entry now is being pulled back from there about 6 feet. And then we work our way across to the single-car garage. We're pulling that back an additional distance so that the concerns about the encroachments that already exist in the house have been alleviated. And we're trying to mitigate the variance requirement for the encroachment into the rear yard setback, I guess it is, since it's an Ocean Boulevard address. And then we continue to do that all the way up the building. So when you get to the next level up, we're pulling back another 7 feet, and you get to the next level up, and we're pulling back 4 feet from the existing facade. And we kind of, again, periscope back into the lot. And then everything from that point, in terms of elevation, our highest point is, as Justin's brought out, we cannot exceed the height of the curb at Ocean Boulevard. But the highest point of the building, which is the elevator shaft that extends, you can see in the center of the building, is 10 foot 9 inches below that mark. And the remainder of the property is between 16 and 17 feet below that, which is, if you think back to that other slide, this is why we can afford the views down to China Cove Beach. And the only other thing I would want to say before closing here, well, a couple things. One, we specifically elected to use kind of an earth tone color palette on the project. And a big part of that is when you're sitting at the park on West Jetty and you're looking towards the property, we didn't want this stark contrast of material and color to kind of distract the eye into the bluff. And that seemed like a prudent way to approach it, given the comments of the Coastal Commission on the last project. And then the last thing, all the new construction outside of the footprint of the building, as we go into this addition from right to left, all of the heights for those roofs are completely conforming to the requirements of the zone. And with that, thank you for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Excuse me, just real quick, we'll probably have a couple of comments for you, but first off, have you read and approve or agree with the conditions of approval?
The conditions of approval in regard to?
The staff report and their conditions that
Yeah.
are assigned?
Oh, yeah. So if I'm understanding specifically, so we have the conditions of approval that were in regard to the public right-of-way off of the ramp. So,
Exactly.
so we, myself and my client have talked about this at length. And so one of the things we have worked with the Public Works and Parks Department also was the removal of the dirt walkway, and then also a rehabilitation of that slope at our cost, where indigenous plants and drought-tolerant plants will be placed there. They would be irrigated for a period of time where they would take hold, and then the irrigation systems would be removed.
Okay, great. So that's a yes. I think.
An absolute yes, sorry.
Perfect.
That was a long way of saying yes.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Just real quick, just clarification. You're not taking any access off of Ocean Boulevard or that little...
None
only
whatsoever.
from Wayland.
Yeah. In fact, when we began our preliminary design, it was about the time that the renovation the city was doing by adding the sidewalk at Ocean Boulevard and the benches. And then at that period of time also, and if you've been to the property, you know what I'm talking about, at that portion of the benches, they incorporated a cable rail system, a guardrail, where the access that previously existed was completely blocked off unless you're climbing over the rails. So.
Yeah, might as well stay there for a second. Commissioner Langford?
Yes, Mr. Martinez. And if you wouldn't mind pulling back up that view from the ramp, if you still have that. I'm going back to the palm trees because I'm just curious as to how it's going to kind of lay out in this new view, especially from the ramp side. because I saw there were a couple of other palm trees in the frame of existing landscaping. So are these proposed palm trees of that same kind of look, and can we expect it to grow to about that same size? This isn't quite the view. I think it's one more back, or a couple or something. Yeah, that's probably a good one.
So those two palm trees do not exist on our property.
Okay.
Within the circles that staff has provided here, that is the foliage that exists on our property that we are planning on removing and replacing with the limited height application of the new landscape.
Yeah. And I guess the reason I'm asking, in the renderings, it doesn't show the palm trees, so it's hard to visualize kind of what the end product is going to look like.
Yeah.
Are those palm trees what you're going for the palm trees that are going to be planted on the property?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I do not know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're the architect, so not the landscape architect.
The Mission Landscape provided the landscape design for us, and they worked hand in hand, not only with the Public Works, but with our civil engineering consultant who had to do a number of other reports for the application.
Okay.
I will tell you that there isn't anything outside of what Public Works actually specifically required that is etched in stone. So if it were a condition of approval that we rethink those palm trees or remove them, then we can work with that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, started looking at palm trees. Anyone from the audience wish to speak on this item? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just on the palm trees, looking at handwritten page 57, it looks like there are 2 palm trees, but I'm guessing they might be in the city right away. Is that? 57, the rendering, but I think those are the existing palm trees. Are those the 2 you're talking about?
I was trying to figure out if those ones that aren't on the property, the ones that are being proposed for the property that aren't shown in the rendering, would be similar or matching those to kind of, is that like part of the cohesive look they're going for? And that height, which would be limiting to the view, but we have other palm trees that are also kind of limiting to the view, so it might make sense.
What we can do is propose something in regard to the queen palms that are being shown on there and the queen palms that we're discussing right now when we get there.
Yeah, and actually page 65 shows where they're located, and they're just right on the corner of the property, handwritten page 65.
Yeah.
Looks like they're off property from that rendering, from this plan.
Well, Commissioner Bartow, so those are the ones that are existing, but they're proposing to add more.
Gotcha.
Right? So those are the ones I'm referring to, right?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Vice Chair Rosine, if I can maybe provide a little bit more clarification. On handwritten page 97 is the landscape plan. So there are 2 existing palms that are just outside the private property lines. Those are the 2 that are shown in the existing view simulation, but those are existing. They are proposing 3 additional queen palms on private property. The queen palms are similar to the existing trees, so they should be cohesive.
So those trees that Commissioner Langford is pointing out, the 2 that are shown here on page 97, are in the right-of-way. Technically, those are...
Correct.
I guess the homeowner of that home is maintaining that space through an encroachment agreement of some sort. But ultimately, the city could make a determination as to whether or not those are allowed to stay.
That's correct.
Okay? We good with the palm trees? Let's go to... I get it. Does anyone from the audience wish to speak on this item? Come on up. State your name and address for the record.
Oh, okay. It's Laura Cordovano, 127 Sapphire Avenue, Balboa Island. But in full disclosure, my family owns 2601 Way Lane, so it's right across the street. So hence the significant interest. And my interest sort of lies in the runoff. I'm concerned that there's so many flat plateaus that there'll be significant runoff. So that's one thing, and I wanted to see how that was addressed. The other thing that in looking at the plans, and it wasn't quite clear to me, and I didn't have enough time to really study it, it looks like the master level, the third level, is cantilevered. Is that, I mean, I guess that would be a question for the architect, because it's an overhang, it looks like. And I was wondering what kind of support that is, and for that, because that's can be a complicated mission to accomplish. And what else do I have? So there was that. And of course, the variances and everything else, I'm a little bit confused why all of that is just kind of, let's just grant them, because, that bluff is something that's very precious to people. And one thing, over the years, my family's owned the home, which has been 30 years more. I've seen China Cove go from being very kind of isolated to becoming very much a community area. And I think what's added to that significantly was that park bench on Ocean and that lookout point right there really introduced a lot of people to what was there and beyond it, and the sidewalk along there. So I see now all the time, because I'm at the house probably once a day, I see people with carriages, I see elderly people with wheelchairs, I see every different type of neighbor, and those were things that I never saw before. And there's more traffic going in and out of the beach, and I mean foot traffic, and people are, as I had mentioned before, they're going down the ramp, which is kind of fun. We're sharing the ramp now with pedestrians, but it's created a community feeling there, which I think is extremely positive. And so I wonder how this is going to disrupt that, how the construction process is going to interfere with the enjoyment of the community of that property, because it really has become a magnet. And so those were basically my questions.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else like to speak on this item?
Vice Chair Rosine, members of the commission, my name again is Jim Mosier. First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate the architect's attempt to be sensitive to the site. I think that's very commendable. We saw a lot of comparison with the application that was rejected. I can't say technically, but all the coastal commissioners were asked if they would approve it, and they were saying no. That's why it was withdrawn. Made in 2016. There is an important distinction, though, which is that was for building a new home on the site, and this request is to expand a existing non-conforming building. And we do have rules in our LCP that the staff presentation went over very, very quickly as to how you can approve and when you can approve an addition to an existing non-conforming building. And those rules actually changed since the initial approval of our LCP in 2006, at about the same time as the other project was coming in. It was the first project that this planning commission saw. But the rules have been changed with the agreement of the city, and the staff is still trying to come to grips with that, I think. So there is a multi-step process when you consider an addition to a non-conforming building. The first step is whether any addition at all is allowed, and there are several conditions that can disallow adding to that, because the policy is to try to bring those buildings into conformity. One of those conditions is that the existing building cannot impair views to coastal bluffs. And as we saw, it doesn't mean blocking, it says impairing. And as we saw from the harbor and from the peninsula across the way, there's not a huge impairment, but there is an impairment. So it's questionable whether any addition at all is allowed. And then if you are allowed an addition, there's various other considerations that you're supposed to make. Some of them have been added at the very last minute to the resolution. I don't know if you're clear on what those are. One of them that's long-standing, well, one of them is when you're considering how much addition you should add, was the existing building architecturally or historically significant? And that's in your resolution as if that's a good thing if it's not significant, not historically important. Actually, that's if the building was not, that's supposed to be, you don't want to add a lot to a building that was not, has any particular importance to it. Unfortunately, I ran out of time. Yes. Could you give me 30 more seconds?
30 seconds. Sounds good.
Is it possible to show the first slide from Mr. Martinez's presentation, his title slide?
Yes, please. If we could do that.
Okay, in approving this, you're supposed to see if you can improve the visual quality of the area. I wanted to point out in the slide on the left that's showing what it's looking at from that important viewpoint that we had. And I would ask you what that white long wall is. That's apparently, I thought it's a retaining wall. Maybe it's a site wall. That is degrading the visual enjoyment of the area. Couldn't that be some kind of open work thing? I think it's just delineating where the property line is. Why does the public, from that viewpoint and the ramp, have to look forever at a big white wall staring at them? Couldn't that be improved? And couldn't other aspects of that view be improved? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Any other speakers on this item? Okay. Please come forward.
My name is Nancy Portale, and I live on 2502 Seaview. So we use China Cove, and we go down there all the time. My question was about the height variance requested. So the parapet exceeds the height limit. And in addition, we have an elevator that is exceeding it even more. I also see a deck on that top level as well. And I was wondering if there were any rails around there that were exceeding the height limit as well.
We're not taking questions, but if the applicant chooses to respond, he will. But thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Oh, you get one in front of you.
My name is Karen Carlson, and I've lived in China Cove for over 30 years. And I'm at 2616 Cove, which is one lot in front of this, so I kind of back on. And when I said sideways, it's because in Mr. Mosier's comments, I would like to put in a pitch for changing the address. I know Ocean Boulevard has a cachet that probably they feel has value. But as someone who lives down there and deals with the traffic, we have a problem with 2600 Cove Street actually faces over on Kirchhoff. And you can't believe the number of people that kind of come down to the end of my street where the beach starts and they can't find their house. It's poorly identified. If somebody is trying to find 2607 Ocean, and they're never going to find it. And even with the GPSs of today, we have people still trying to drive across the beach to get from 2616 to 2600. So I know it's a small thing, but it's going to be an issue. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. There, another speaker?
Hello, my name is Richard Martinez. I'm one of the owners of the property. Thank you very much to Jocelyn. That was very well prepared and very delightful presentation. I really appreciate that a lot. Anyways, a couple of the questions that I wanted to respond to. That one, as far as the address change, it's really not the biggest deal in the world. I don't care. The property is where it is. It's in China Cove, so whether it's Ocean Boulevard or Wade Boulevard, it's not the biggest deal in the world. I don't want to like hold up the process, because we're trying to make this area nicer, better, more beautiful. It's already a beautiful area. A lot of these developers, they're doing a lot of different things around that on Ocean Boulevard. I bought the property with some partners from Casey Lesher, who's a big agent in town, and he assured me that I'd be able to do a lot of the stuff we were hoping to do. And like again, Mr. Daniel Martinez was saying that we're substantially reducing our proposal for what was actually approved at one time. And I know that didn't. It actually, from what I understand, did get coastal permission, but the residences were still, going to be, involved in, disputing that. But either way, that and the palm tree, just want to let you know, Mr. Langford too as well, no big deal. You don't have to have palm trees. That was just something that the landscaping company came up with. Personally, I would say no palm trees. This is the first I heard about it, because if I lived behind there, I wouldn't want a palm tree in my view either. It just doesn't make sense. So that can be something that can be, squashed really quickly. And then just wanted to point out, let me make it pretty brief here. There's we bought the house for $4.6 million, and, there's a certain amount about penciling out, what you're going to be able to make or what you're not going to be able to make, and what the cost is to, fix this house up in Corona del Mar, as opposed to, the other houses in the neighborhood. I grew up coming to this town back in the 70s. My dad's high school friends bought houses right there in the, little corridor there above big CDM and stuff like that. And, I've done a lot of real estate myself. I'm a real estate broker, and I've saw a lot of properties off the flower streets there. And, most of them, if not all of them, have been torn down or re-subjugated or evaluated with the original structure and are added on to. So, we are kind of a dinosaur, if you will, that property right there. I mean, that is just like, it's an eyesore. And you'll notice some of the people that were here tonight, most of them were not actually China Cove's residences for the last person that was there. So anyways, and she had a valid, thing about the address, and that's not a problem there. We've had several discussions and meetings, pre-meetings with the neighbors, and that's why I don't think you see anybody here, trying to, stop this project. We just want to make it nice, get it done, and, keep up with what's going on in the neighborhood. So thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. So I guess that was the applicant, but do we want to give the architect an opportunity to respond to any of those questions? Sure, why don't you go ahead and do that.
So I'll just address the issues that came up. First of all, the drainage consideration, and it's an important question. So part of our civil engineering exercises, we had to produce a water management plan, a hydrology report. And within that report, there's actually a precise grading plan, and within that grading plan, there's a bioretention system at the new retaining wall on Way Lane. So everything on the property is being collected. So we're mitigating the concern in terms of runoff. The cantilever, you know, I like to tell my clients there isn't anything we can't do structurally, just how much you want to pay for it. This is a really minor issue with the cantilever. The reason why we did it is we wanted to step back and then move forward to create articulation from the lower level and just kind of provide a shadow line. It's not a huge cantilever, it's less than a foot, but that's where we are on that. The retaining wall. So as you may know as commissioners, that retaining wall cannot exceed 3 feet at any point from the view from Ocean Boulevard or from the ramp. And so that's what it is. It's 3 feet above natural grade, and it can't be any taller. And in fact, based on the landscape plan, it's going to be buried in landscape at any rate. So in the rendering, of course, it's the wall, but the rendering preceded the landscape designs, as you already pointed out. And then there was a question about elevation. The elevator was pointed out. The elevator is within the requirements of the zoning code, so it doesn't exceed the height limit. It doesn't require any variance whatsoever. And then I think that pretty much covers the main points that were questions asked. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. Staff have any?
Can I respond to one last thing? As far as the wall goes that Mr. Martin was talking about too, that's simply just a rendering. I mean, yeah, I agree. No one probably wants to look at a white wall, so we will put, we can put privacy hedges in front of there to the code, and so you have to see the wall, and it can be all floral, and that's not something that we really don't need to worry about, I would think, because we could make that, you know, advantageous to all, because, you know, there's still some other things that we're going to have to deal with. The city came in and they did the lookout point there, but there's still this kind of gray area between my property and that property. You know, we want to make it beautiful. We want to make sure that we have the right drainage going on. We don't want any problems, you know, with drainage on our property, anybody else's property. And we want that place to be, you know, an area where people can come and rejoice and you know, and have a good time. Now, you know, with the advent of cell phones and everything like that, everyone like comes and works out there now. So there's people like, there's boot camps and they run up and down the hill there and stuff like that. That's really not my decision to make. You know, that's the city's decision to make as far as what they allow. But, you know, as far as the architecture goes, I mean, the landscape goes, we can definitely hide that white wall.
Thank
you know,
you.
this is a privacy issue.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Appreciate that. Staff, you have any comments for the record?
No further comments unless you have any specific questions for staff.
Commissioners? All right, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, care to deliberate on this?
I would be inclined to change condition 42 to go from landscaping within the Ocean Boulevard setback to just landscaping is limited to, just to prevent the big palm trees. I feel like that's something in the future that people are going to not be happy about. And for the same reason, just to preserve the views from Ocean Boulevard, Mr. Martinez said that wouldn't be a problem. So I just put it in writing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, how would you modify number 42?
I would strike within the Ocean Boulevard setback. Then it would just read, landscaping is limited to a maximum height of 60 inches to preserve views from Ocean Boulevard.
So any tree, but the tree that or the palm that you're referring to is not within the right-of-way that they're proposing? It just goes away is what I heard that.
But you're saying you'd expand it to the rest of the property, so you couldn't have any landscaping greater than 60 inches across the entirety of the property?
That's what I'm proposing. What
Just a little-
do you think?
Just I want to clarify. So, would it be existing and proposed landscaping, or only proposed landscaping?
Existing and proposed.
Existing and proposed.
But across the entirety of the property, including the Ocean Boulevard setback?
Yes.
And even at looking at the planning palette, there's nothing really here that would exceed 5 feet.
I mean, because
It's a 35-foot property, I guess, when I look at it. If you want to put a 60-inch tree on your second floor deck, I don't know. I don't know if we're achieving.
yeah.
I think it makes a ton of sense in the setback, though, because there's a lot there.
Well, because to my eye on the landscaping plan, the only plants that would be more than 5 feet tall would be the palm trees. So it would really just be limiting them planting palm trees in their building envelope, which would prevent, the visibility issues.
I think we heard from the applicant that they were willing to remove those trees anyway. So there's actually four palm trees, three of them are sagos, which are low growing. And then the other two are queens. And the two queens, I think what we heard wouldn't be allowed. They'd be over 60 inches. I think staff could handle that in their review based on that comment. So within 60 inches seems reasonable.
Okay.
So are we changing the condition, or?
So is that condition?
Just extends across onto the property. It's pretty easy. Okay.
Okay.
Other than that, I think the application is great. I think it's a good-looking property that's trying to help preserve the views and, better the community.
All right. Any other comments?
I'm good.
Well, I will say that it's a good-looking building. I appreciate the applicant being willing to make those modifications. And I can make the findings. Do we want to have is someone willing to make a motion?
I'll make the motion since I'm being the temperamental one, apparently. and then I guess I would also, for the record, would like to give the applicant the flexibility to choose whether it's Ocean Boulevard or Way Lane. I think there is a good argument for either one. It's personal preference. So, for staff, that's just my thought on that. So, with that being said, I'd like to move approval of PA 2023-0064 with my proposed change to condition number 42 to now read, landscaping is limited to a maximum height of 60 inches to preserve views from Ocean Boulevard.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Call for a vote.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, congratulations to the applicant. Moving on to the next item. Motions for consideration. Are there any motions for reconsideration? All right, seeing none. Item 5, report by the Community Development Director.
Good evening. Jaime Murillo, Acting Deputy Director. I just have a few updates. So for the next Planning Commission agenda on March 7th, we have 2 items. One is the General Plan Annual Progress Report. And the second item will be the review of the appeal of the Genesis Auto dealership at 400 West Coast Highway. And then just one other thing to mention, the Commission will remember that staff had a study session back in September to discuss the housing element implementation program and those various components to implement our housing element, and that included the land use element update to create new development capacity in different focus areas in the city, the creation of a housing opportunity overlay zoning district, and the development of objective design standards. We recently held a study session with the City Council at their last meeting. One thing I did want to mention, though, is we did prepare a draft EIR for that program. It was released to the public on February 12th, and it's still out for review. And so public comments are due March 28th. So anyone that's interested in reviewing the draft EIR, it is available online.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any items that the Commission wishes to see on future agenda? All right, anyone from the audience wish to speak on those comments? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Are we good? I missed that. I think we're good. We're adjourned.